two Kyrgyz men whose lives were adversely affected and forever changed by the biggest tragedies of the 20th century, Chingiz Aitmatov and Azamat Altai. Two people whose lives reflect all the political and moral lessons of the century. Chingiz Aitmatov, the most famous Kyrgyz writer, lost his father to Stalin's repressive regime in 1938 and only found where his father had been executed and buried 53 years after it occurred. Not only his father, a promising young Kyrgyz leader, but several of his uncles also fell victim to the Soviet dictatorship. Aitmatov hid his deep inner sadness after losing his father at the age of 9 and dedicated his life to educating himself and his three younger siblings. He became an internationally known author whose books, which have been translated into more than 160 languages, describe the national character, lifestyle, and existential philosophy of the nomadic Kyrgyz people. In every book, Aitmatov created a hero who, in whatever difficult circumstances he or she was forced to live, would choose to live freely, happily, and fully.
Если человек перестанет думать о жизни и смерти, если он перестанет метаться между этими двумя полюсами бытия, то он, наверное, перестанет быть человеком. Каждый, любой человек думает, и ему предстоит думать о том, что такое жизнь и что такое смерть. Это неизбежно. Это обязательная, я бы сказал, доля всякого мыслящего существа. Столкнуться задолго до наступления самой смерти с мыслями о ней. И эти мысли, на мой взгляд, они, наверное, и оттачивали, совершенствовали человеческое в человеке. Если бы не было понимания смерти, то не было бы, наверное, и понимания сути жизни.
The Kyrgyz author was a supporter of Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev and advised him on the implementation of the very first political reforms in the final years of the USSR. He was later appointed Soviet ambassador to Luxembourg and then was Kyrgyzstan's ambassador to the Benelux countries, spending the last 18 years of his life in Europe, mostly Brussels. Even after his death, Aitmatov's books and their heroes continued to introduce Kyrgyzstan as a beautiful, mountainous country and its people's rich character and values to the entire world. Azamat Altai, a young and educated Kyrgyz man, decided to stay in the West after World War II after realizing that he would be punished in the USSR since serving as a POW in a Nazi camp. That decision cut him off from his homeland, from his father and other relatives, for 55 years. Eager to make a connection with his homeland, Altai made contacts with other Russian and Soviet dissidents living in Europe and attended several gatherings of Central Asian and Soviet dissidents, even writing articles for dissident publications. He was later appointed an editor of the Turkeli magazine, published by Central Asian dissidents in Europe. Through those connections, Azamat Altai became Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty's very first Kyrgyz broadcaster in March 1953. In his work, Altai had to cover many taboo topics in Soviet Kyrgyzstan, such as victims of Stalin's repression, young Kyrgyz writers, intellectuals, poets, and politicians whose names, let alone their works, were forbidden in the Kyrgyz media at the time. Altai, and later his new Kyrgyz colleagues at RFERL, covered issues regarding the Kyrgyz diaspora living in Afghanistan, Turkey, and Pakistan. RFERL's Kyrgyz service also paid a lot of attention in the early years to Kyrgyz language, customs, and history issues in the ever-increasingly Russified Soviet Kyrgyzstan. Azamat Altai collected some 6,000 books and magazines on Kyrgyz and Central Asian topics at his home and had helped some prominent Western academics to conduct their research on Kyrgyzstan behind the Iron Curtain. He reported for RFARL's Kyrgyz service for some 40 years. Attacked regularly by the Soviet Kyrgyz media as a traitor and enemy of the people, Azamat Altai still had his secret supporters and admirers in Kyrgyzstan. Intellectuals, writers, and scholars would listen to RFARL Kyrgyz programs at their dachas, often built atop hills with better reception. And they would discuss Altai himself and RFARL Kyrgyz service programs among themselves. Some of the topics were related to the Soviet communist leadership and political corruption issues. That's why in 1995, when Altai, a retired veteran journalist and former RFARL Kyrgyz service director, was finally invited to independent Kyrgyzstan and arrived in the capital Bishkek, he was greeted as a national hero, as a Kyrgyz American who had devoted his life to the struggle for his people's freedom and independence, for Kyrgyz language, culture, and history.
Ата жұртқа болған сағынышты ата жұрттан ажыраған ғана адам біледі. Онсыз ешкім түсініш мүмкін емес. Ата жұртты мен ар заман сағынып келдім. Елімдің жаман адаттары болса да, жақсы адаттары болса да мен үшін үлгі еді. Onun için demek 40. yılı geçsem 55 yıldan keyin 95. yılı Manastır'ın yıldığında varıp Kırgızistan'da gördüm.
Chingiz Aitmatov and Azamat Altai were born in Kyrgyzstan, but spent most of their lives on two different sides of the Cold War. Yet they were still able to meet several times during the Soviet era and again later in independent Kyrgyzstan. They had some important common goals in life: to find their lost fathers, to fight for their people's freedom, to preserve their national history, culture, and language, and to find justice and freedom in ordinary people's lives.